1. Auditoire de Calvin. During this tour of Geneva, we pause at those places that make it clear that this little city of Geneva has had an enormous influence internationally, not only with respect to religion, but also on the development of human rights and the work of the United Nations. This came about because in the 16th century, during the Reformation, the city became a centre of religious renewal. During this tour, special attention will be paid to the social significance of this renewal. Your participation in this tour supports the human rights work of the World Evangelical Alliance. You are now standing in front of Auditoire de Calvin. This is where, in the 16th century, the leaders of the Reformation, including Farel, Calvin, Beza, and John Knox, came together, along with refugees from other parts of Europe. The Reformation sought a more personal way of reading the Bible and being church. However, the Reformation did not only concern theological and church matters. If we look back today to the events of that era, the social influence of these gatherings is clear. What was being taught here had its repercussions in changes and modernization of society in the succeeding centuries. The Geneva reformers were opposed to abuse of power. This is the most striking social issue that was dealt with. However, the reformers did not want to unleash a revolution. They respected the authorities. They were of the opinion that the people should obey the rulers. But at the same time, the government should not be a law unto itself. Tyranny and dictatorships should be resisted, according to the Calvinists, as they became known later. In retrospect, this was a very important step in the development towards a new society. We shall expand on this when we look at the wall of the Reformation. 2. The house where Henri Dunant wrote Souvenir de Solferino. Here, 3 centuries after the death of John Calvin, the Red Cross, the first international aid organization, was born. It was a private organization set up in order to deal with a social evil. Henri Dunant, the founder of the Red Cross, had been much concerned with spiritual matters, even from childhood. When he was 14 years old, he already organized a prayer group. He also would have liked to become a prison chaplain, but events took a different turn. He found himself on the battlefield of Solferino. What he saw there was in total contrast with his ideas about humanity. He saw that war turned people into barbarians. Dunant was appalled to see that existing principles about respect were completely flouted. He immediately sprung into action while still on the battlefield and called on the members of his church to send aid for the wounded. On his return home, he withdrew in this house, which he, together with his sisters and brothers, had inherited from his aunt. This house is where he wrote his book, Souvenir de Solferino, a plea for action covering 3 points. It starts with an eyewitness account of what he encountered on the battlefield of Solferino, followed by an analysis of same, and finally an action plan. This book led to the founding of the Red Cross and also to the Geneva Convention, in which the rules of war are set out. The Geneva Convention is still a cornerstone of human rights. 3. Birthplace of Rousseau. This is the house where the philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau was born in 1712, almost 2 centuries after Calvin. We know him as a source of inspiration of the French Revolution. This revolution is often seen as an important liberation of the individual. It is less well known that the roots of the French Revolution go back to the vision of society that arose in Geneva. To understand this, we should first point to Rousseau himself. He continued to call himself a citizen of Geneva even after he was banned from the city. Moreover, he expressly praises Calvin in his book De Contrat Social for his influence to create ostensible rules. Rules should be reasonable and not applied arbitrarily, and adds that people are wrong to regard Calvin only as a theologian. In addition, Rousseau drew on the work of the Calvinist fighters against tyranny, jurists and legal thinkers. He had their books in his library. For a man who abandoned the Christian faith of his upbringing, this is remarkable. As Calvin did, Rousseau also emphasizes the connection in society, the contrat social, a social contract between people of equal legal standing, who together decide how society should be organized and regulated. Calvin and Rousseau both had the public well-being as a priority. Four, Town Hall, the founding of the League of Nations. It is remarkable that Geneva was chosen as headquarters of the League of Nations instead of The Hague, where the International Court of Justice was located already. This is all related to the history of Geneva. President Wilson of the USA, who took the initiative, himself had Calvinist roots. He was well aware of the part played by Geneva in the struggle against tyranny. Five, Reformation Monument. Remarkably enough, on this monument, erected in 1909, the 400th anniversary of Calvin's birth, you will find no inscriptions of theological considerations. The political and social developments that the Reformers initiated are the central focus. At the top, you can read the words, Post tenebras lux, after the darkness, light. Below these words stand the Reformers who had so much political influence. Farel, Calvin, Beza, and John Knox. War, greed, and destruction don't have the last word. After the darkness comes light. What you see on this monument is the impact of Calvin's Geneva, gradually through history, in other parts of the world. On both sides of the relief in front of you, you may read what we might call the WikiLeaks of the 16th century. It is a citation from a diplomatic letter from the English government. They are worried about the charisma of the reformer John Knox. The ambassador of the government writes about him, "The voice of one man has more effect than an army of clarions in our ears." The English government feared the influence of John Knox, who was thought to endanger the established order. Six, Reformation Monument. Here we see a relief about the developments in the Netherlands. Cast your minds back to what was taught by the Calvinists. For example, in the Auditoire de Calvin, about the struggle against tyranny. In the Netherlands, where Spain held sway, this teaching fell on fertile ground and served as a building block to make that country into a nation. You see here a citation from the Declaration of Independence of the Netherlands in 1581. It reads like this: "Citizens are not created by God to satisfy the monarch to be submissive to him in everything he commands, whether it is a godly or an ungodly law, and to serve him like slaves. On the contrary, the monarch is created for the citizens, without whom he would not be monarch, and whom he must govern justly and reasonably. This citation is a good example of the anti-tyranny ideas of the Calvinists. Moreover, the Declaration of Independence of the Netherlands inspired the Declaration of Independence of the USA 2 centuries later. At that time also, it concerned the abjuring of a foreign monarch, i.e. the English king. This shows the far-reaching consequences of what was taught in the Auditoire de Calvin. Seven, Reformation Monument. Here you see pictured the history of the so-called Pilgrim Fathers, a group of Calvinistic emigrants who dared to make the ocean crossing to America on account of the religious persecution they suffered in England. Prior to this, the majority of the first group of Pilgrim Fathers lived in the Netherlands from 1609 to 1620 as refugees. The self-confidence of the Netherlands was growing strong during that time, which must have had a big influence on them. You see here the declaration of the Pilgrim Fathers before they stepped on land in America. This declaration uses typical Calvinistic terms, such as covenant and civil body politic, which refers to the citizens' political organization. For the first time, an alliance of citizens was established that would become an important building stone for a nation. Eight, Reformation Monument. Political stability in 17th century England was very weak. This led to what the English call the Glorious Revolution. A Calvinist from the Netherlands came to sit on the English throne. He signed a declaration here quoted between the state and the society that secured the rights of the subject. No decision without agreement of Parliament. No taxation without permission from Parliament, and free elections of Parliament. Just as it was in the Netherlands in the 17th century, the right to vote was only available to the upper class. However, it is the start of the development by which government comes from citizens and not from authorities. When we reflect on these events in Geneva, Scotland, the Netherlands, the USA and England, we can conclude that together they constitute an important victory over tyranny and dictatorship. Power was no longer the starting point of governing, but servant leadership and the rights of the people. Not that we can say that everything was improved henceforth and for all time. Human rights need to be defended again and again. Also in places where they seem to be cherished. Human rights are a journey. Nine, Chapelle de l'Oratoire, Rue Tabazan. We return briefly to the contribution of Henri Dunant. It is from this church that Henri Dunant had materials sent to him on the battlefield, 4 years before the founding of the Red Cross, in order to organize first aid to the victims of war. Amongst other things, he asked for bandages and even tobacco, in order to enable the soldiers to have a humane death. The plaque on the wall recalls this action to our memory. It is particularly interesting that this social action arose out of the citizens' own initiative. This approach is deeply rooted in Calvinism, which takes seriously the responsibility of people for society. People do not only have rights, but also responsibilities. Dunant lived this approach in an impressive manner. "10. College Calvin. This tour of the stimulant of Geneva's history would not be complete if we did not mention what made human rights achievable in practice. That is, universal education. The reformers were very conscious of that, and in 1559 they founded this school. In the 16th century, nearly 10% of the population of Geneva was enrolled in the school. The school was not restricted to the elite. It was open to all classes of society. Poor people were assisted so that they could attend school. The deepest divisions of society were thereby mitigated. The College Calvin has been in continuous educational use since that time. We hope that this tour will encourage you to keep thinking about Geneva's motto, Post tenebras lux. After the darkness comes light.